Go. All right, hey everybody, welcome back to the Barbell Medicine Instagram, YouTube. We're doing a Q&A. It's been a minute since I did a Instagram live or YouTube live session, so we take questions from both the tubes and Instagram, and we try to answer any burning questions that you may have. So, let's see. Today's Monday. I don't know if I have anything that's like super pressing on my mind, but we'll say what's up. I have the 4-day temp. Oh yeah, hey, I've got a few templates that are going to be coming out, so I've finished updating them, and so yeah, I'm hoping that this week they get to you guys. What else? I don't know. I don't know if I have anything else. So we'll wait for questions. Hopefully, you guys have some good ones tonight. Gals too. What are the compelling reasons to squat in flats? I don't actually have any compelling reasons to advise somebody to squat in flats unless they prefer doing so, and there's no reason why they shouldn't do it, meaning that their form isn't remarkably better in lifting shoes other than flats. The only compelling thing I can make is that the only compelling case I can make is that there aren't a lot of great flat shoes that have a metatarsal strap and that have an incompressible sole. So there's that. Yeah. Best way to grow and bake biceps stronger. Well, I don't know if you can bake biceps stronger. I suppose if you were a baker and you wanted to potentially, carb your way to bicep gains, you could do that. But honestly, biceps are just like any other muscle group in that you just need to train them. I mean, most people who want to train arms want to blast them once or twice a week, but I think you're going to need to train your arms more times than that. And in fact, on this new 4-day hypertrophy template, the arm work scales up to 4 days a week. So let's see. Liz Lynch, do I recommend that powerlifters get a baseline EKG like they do with high school football players? Well, it's not recommended that high school football players get a baseline EKG either. That's actually not the current guideline. Unless that changed in the last year or two. But yeah, the problem is that's not a sensitive enough test to identify people who need further workup, so you catch a lot of things that ultimately get worked up for no reason can potentially harm folks. And so no, I don't think that powerlifters should get a baseline EKG. I think that getting a baseline EKG is kind of a nebulous sort of recommendation, because baseline, you're not going to compare EKG to EKG unless you had a problem at some point, and then you would only be getting an EKG if you had symptoms or if you had a family history of something that would benefit by getting an EKG. So let's see. Why upper back trunk work on GPP days on the bridge? Because I think that overall the volume for those things need to be higher, but I don't want to dedicate a bunch of training time to it. So there you go. Smells the glove. Recently developed a tender lateral patellar retinaculum or something in that area. Yeah, I would agree that it's probably something in that area, not necessarily the retinaculum. Visibly swollen during leg flexion, feels unstable or loose. Any recommendations to overcome? No, having not evaluated you, I can't make any specific recommendations. I think that if you are feeling knee instability and this has been persistent for a long period of time, you should probably get it checked out by someone who's up on pain science and can do a good musculoskeletal exam. This would not be a chiropractor unless it's one of our guys, Michael Ray, or probably not most PTs, unfortunately. There's some of them out there. So if you find somebody who's with the clinical athlete, might be reasonable, or we got Michael Ray and Derek Miles both on staff. They can help. So, yeah, I wouldn't do anything necessarily without an exam, and subjective feeling of instability or loose doesn't necessarily mean anything to me, just like lateral retinacular pain is not sensitive or specific enough to tell me what you have or don't have. Sour gummy or watermelon flavor? I actually think they taste the same, so I don't have a favorite. Yeah. What exactly is Gains RX? Gains RX actually is nothing anymore. It's Peri RX, and it's BCAAs, beta-alanine, betaine anhydrous, creatine, HMB, citrulline malate, some salt. That's basically it. It's all the stuff that you would want peri-workout if you were going to take supplements. Barbell Medicine YouTube channel, intros, and content as a whole are great. Hey, thanks. Keep it up. I'll try. Training considerations for a male man type 2 diabetes, recently had gout and is currently on dialysis. Yeah, that's tough. I probably wouldn't do anything differently unless proven otherwise. So I don't know how that particular person functions on days they have dialysis. Many folks are tired and feel like they can't do much on the days they have dialysis, so maybe they train the days after, as long as they've been cleared by a physician to exercise. But I wouldn't do anything special until proven otherwise. So that's how most of those things go. Yeah. Where can you get one of these hats? You can get one of these hats on the barbellmedicine.com website. So there you go. Any issues squatting first on the third day of the bridge before deadlifts? I have patellofemoral pain syndrome, and deads before squats makes for a bad day. I think that I probably wouldn't do that. I'd run the program as it is, and then I don't think that patellofemoral pain syndrome is a accurate diagnosis, one, and two, I think that you need to stop expecting to have pain if you deadlift first for squats. And if you can't squat without markedly increasing pain, then I think the programming needs to be adjusted towards your tolerance. Okay. Any of the new templates for more advanced lifters? Yes. Have another meet prep one. Yeah. Has anyone complained about your deadlifts, rows off the floor being too loud? No, not to my face. Let's see. Hello, Dr. F. Do you feel like a good nosh and or kibitz could remedy roughly 60% of the world's issues? Have a little bagel with the schmear, Come on, honey. What are you doing? Does the 3-hour feeding window before muscle protein synthesis can be reinitiated apply only to protein or to carbs as well? What about drinking coffee in between? So definitely not to coffee, carbs in between in mouse models, rat models, mouse models, rodent models. Suggest that if you had previously had a dose of essential amino acids a few hours before, that you could potentially take carbs in between feedings and get a muscle protein synthesis response, although in humans that doesn't appear to be the case. I actually don't like snacking for that reason, so I think you should have discrete meals that are separated by 3 to 5 hours. Yeah. I know aspartame breaks down into 2 amino acids. Would drinking a diet soda restart the 3-hour period to restart muscle protein synthesis? No. Nope. Is stubborn fat really a thing? I think fat that requires one to get to a really low body fat in order to be reduced could be considered stubborn fat, and that's probably a thing. What is my opinion on the carnivore diet? I think that it is not useful. I think that its creator, Sean Baker, is not a smart person when it comes to nutrition. I think the evidence is woefully lacking, and I think that he's jumped the shark. So previously he was doing well as an orthopedic surgeon. I guess lost his medical license. Now just makes up stuff about the diet. So that's cool, I guess. All right, back to the gram. What's wrong with my squat? Every time I squat, I continue to add weight and it feels better. It's like I keep getting stronger and stronger and you can't stop. It sounds like a good problem to have. First world problems. Is it weird to feel like I peak around week 8 in the 12-week strength? I don't know if it's weird. I think that given the inter-individual variation in how folks respond to training, that's not necessarily unusual. Yep. Just got the GPP hypertrophy template. Can you go over mile reps? Well, there's a description in the template about how to do them, but you're doing one activation set. I think it's 14 to 16 reps, somewhere in there. So basically you do an exercise, 14 to 16 reps, should be about an RP 8, rack it, then rest for 20 seconds, 20, 30 seconds, something like that. Then do that same weight again for a set of 5, rack it, rest 20 to 30 seconds, do it again, set of 5. Keep doing that until you do 2 less reps than you did on the initial set, which would be 3 reps if you did 5 on the first one. The idea is that the first, like that big set at RP 8, the 14 to 16 reps is like an activation set, provides some fatigue so that all the subsequent sets after that force you to recruit most of your volitionally available motor units. So there you go. On week 2 of 12, week strength, singles at 8 on competition lifts are decently difficult, but the back down sets are fairly easy. That's true. What RPE are they supposed to be at roughly? Well, it's like you're doing sets of 5 at like 72 to 75%. So if they're accurate, if your single at 8 is, accurate, and then your back off sets are also accurate, should be, RP 6, 7 at the beginning, maybe closer to 8 at the end with fatigue. Currently have significant low back pain, not worried about it, but do you think I overshot my weights for rack pulls and fatigued my back? I don't know if if you rated the RPE very, very high, that could contribute to an imbalancing acute on chronic workload rating, sure. But I wouldn't try to be figured out what happened. Just, not worrying about it, understanding that there's the complex things that are involved. It's not your fault. Pain is not your identity. All these other sort of things that we talk about. You mentioned a long time ago about an efficiency gain for cardio exercise based on weight loss. What was the ratio? It depends on where you lose the weight. So it's like in running, the further away from your center point, from your midpoint of your entire body, that the weight is, and weight loss from there increases your efficiency maximally. So it's like if you were running and you had a 4-pound ankle weight on each ankle, then it would cost you about 25% more energy to run the same pace for the same distance. So if you lost that weight, you'd have a 25% improvement. If you lost 8 pounds, just like those 2 ankle weights, but you said you lost it from your belly, that's like a 4% improvement. So it depends where you lose the weight. Why do you think that CBD oil does nothing? I don't think that it does nothing. Well, let me clarify this. I think that the benefits that people report from taking CBD oil are placebo at best, or just regressions to the mean of certain conditions like sleep, like pain, like anxiety. And I think that there are real risks to taking an unregulated supplement that has a potentially psychoactive substance. Especially because it's the supplement industry, not the pharmaceutical industry. And people are like, yeah, well, the pharmaceutical industry is bad. It's like, yeah, well, pharmaceutical industry did like $43 billion. The supplement industry did like $37 billion. I think the lobbying, is pretty similar between both groups. And the supplement industry is way less regulated. But the current evidence on CBD oil shows, like, people are like, oh, there's no evidence. Yes, there are. There's a reasonable amount of evidence out there. And I think that the longer and longer CBD oil is out there, the more and more is going to amass that it doesn't do much and nothing better than placebo for pain. It doesn't do anything with inflammation that's clinically meaningful at all. It doesn't do anything for anxiety. It doesn't do anything for sleep. In fact, it may make anxiety worse, and it may make sleep worse. And again, it's unregulated. And I think people view it as this panacea of like, oh, look, it's natural, and it's, we've been doing this for thousands of years. Look, like, almost half the pharmaceuticals that are made today are originated from plants. Like, and there's a bunch of toxins and poisons that are from plants. Like, these are just terrible arguments made by people who either have a vested interest in you buying CBD products, #link in bio, or they own the companies themselves, and they're not subjecting their product to the rigorous sort of analysis that needs to be done for pharmaceutical grade stuff. So I don't think people should take CBD oil. I don't think it's worthwhile to supplement. I think that if you have a one of 2 rare congenital seizure disorders, and you're going to use it as an adjunctive anti-epileptic medication, then sure, that's going to be prescribed by your doctor, and it's going to be a pharmaceutical grade cannabinoid. Otherwise, cannabinoids, including CBD oil, are a third line or like that means way down the prescription line, or not recommended at all for nearly any other condition. And there are guidelines on this based on evidence. And so I think that we should stick to the evidence, and until we have better evidence, that's what it is. Have you ever seen a client have more adduction wearing squat shoes versus flat shoes? No. Does supplementing creatine reduce the body's own synthesis of creatine? Yes. But the longest study that I've seen out there is from Portman, Poortman et al. He basically pioneered creatine research. Effectively he was looking at like short-term acute effects, like is there any danger, and there's not. And then he looked at it like a 20-year study over people who took of people who took creatine, and there was no indication that even a cessation of creatine at that point would completely, irreversibly reduce the body's ability to produce to synthesize creatine, nor were there any deleterious effects seen by creatine users either. So relatively safe. What up, Lonnie? How you doing, man? I think we still have shirts on the website, barbellmedicine.com. There you go. Doc, for the squat and the deadlift, is it ideal to have your chin packed or tucked back? I don't use either of those cues because they're not anatomical, and I don't know what that means. A packed chin or a tucked? Like, where are we going? Are we going like... Are we going on a trip? I don't know, man. Let's see. I'm fuzzy on the whole meal thing and timing. What constitutes a meal? Anything with calories in it. We don't have very much specifics outside of that because people aren't doing these tests. I don't think micromanaging your meal timing is terribly useful. Yeah. Is H&B worth taking? Well, depends what you mean by worth it. If you've got excess funds and training is one of the most important things in your life, then I think reasonably sure. Could I jump straight in the 12-week strength program after 1.5 years of unstructured workouts? Could you? I mean, sure. No one's going to stop you. The gains police aren't going to come get you. Is that the best choice? I don't know. If you haven't ran any sort of dedicated programming before, I think I'd run the bridge first. Yeah. I have damage to nerves that innervate my pec major and rhomboid, resulting in shoulder droop and imbalance in my pressing strength. What are my options for regaining function or balancing my strength? Depends how that was diagnosed and if that is real or not. But there's nothing that you can do besides pressing that's going to make you better at pressing than pressing. Does that make sense? So if you have an imbalance or a motor learning issue with pressing due to previous nerve damage, and you want to get better at pressing, the best thing to do is to press. Right? Right. I've heard you mention that most training should be done in this approximately 70-75% of 1RM range. No, you have not, because I said 70 to 80%. Is there a different reason why the majority of the volume on the bridge is over 80%? That's not true either. Man. Yeah, so I think the average intensity range, the average intensity is somewhere between 78 and 82% over the entire course of the bridge for the main lifts. So when I calculated it out, 77, 82, 78, 82% of 1RM. And I think that's where I would want to have somebody as they transition to a higher volume program. That's why the bridge is a bridge to future programming, because if you're coming off the LP, the LP does not adequately prepare you for what I would consider productive training. How many days per week do you work? Every day. I do not work just as a physician. It's not something I'm doing currently. Yeah. My opinion on Yohim Bean is that most folks shouldn't take it. Yeah. Thoughts on trap bar deficit deadlifts, standing on cement blocks, pulling from foot level versus deficit barbell deadlifts. Will butt wink cause an issue down the road? How to avoid butt wink with deficits? So I don't have any thoughts on trap bar deadlifts just in general. If you want to use that as your main deadlift technique, I mean, that's fine as long as you don't care how good you get at deadlifts with a straight bar. I think that the training effect difference as far as overall strength, I don't think you get a better amount of strength development with a hex bar deadlift or trap bar deadlift than a regular barbell deadlift, and I certainly don't think that you get more of a general strength development from doing deficit pulls for either one. I think that's just an accessory lift. But I do think that if you are doing deficit pulls where the handles are at foot level and you're standing on cement blocks, then you're not able to train very heavy, and the technique is likely highly variable and maybe not as well trainable as some other variations that you have, which would ultimately compromise hypertrophy and strength training outcomes. So, I mean, all strength is arbitrary and specific, right? So you got to depend on it kind of depends on what you want, but I probably wouldn't use that as a main variation. If I had to pick. Hey, Jordan, bought the hypertrophy template last week by mistake. You will receive the new template anyway, ? Yes, you will. 5'10", 170 pounds, 31-inch waist. Should I gain weight? If so, what weight should I cut to get abs? I don't know. To either answer. Are you a woman or not? And I don't mean that in a derogatory sense. I mean, I don't know if you're a woman or not because it says Ash makes it splash. Does that mean? I don't know what that means. I guess I'm too old. I think if you're male with that waist, you could probably stand to gain some weight. And if you don't have abs already, I would suspect that you will get abs if you become leaner. But ultimately, it depends on what you want to do, you know? So, can somebody recommend a basic high-intensity interval training program to lose some body fat? How many times per week and when? You should read my article, When Should You Do Conditioning? Yeah, and I may not start with high-intensity interval training. Does it matter recovery or adaptation-wise if I spread my accessory work on my rest days, barbell lifts 4 days a week, then accessories spread out over the other 3 days? I think that, well, I don't know of anything directly looking at this in resistance training. I only know about things looking at this in endurance training. In endurance training, preserving actual days off, people tend to do better. And that's what I would suggest. I wouldn't try to train every day if strength and hypertrophy outcomes were prioritized for a not super advanced trainee. Yeah. When did you look in the mirror and notice the gains? Well, I was leaving your girl's house. I'm kidding. But seriously, no, I'm kidding. I don't know. I thought I was pretty jacked back when I was only 180 pounds. So, I guess I'm just my own hype man, How would I coach a woman differently than a male given the same demographic otherwise? I wouldn't. Yeah, that's the thing. I don't think that men and women require different programs just based on that information alone. And as Austin said, and I have said prior to that, and we just kind of keep going over this over and over again, I don't think there are any special populations until proven otherwise by the empirical evidence gleaned from actually coaching that person. What that means is if I have a woman and a man and they're, both untrained, I'm going to train them the same. And then based on their results, I will adjust differently if needed. There may be a chance that they run the same program. There may be a chance that the woman is more anabolically sensitive, training sensitive than the male, and therefore requires different, some different programming parameters, responds more robustly to certain things than the male. And so it may look like something that you would stereotypically associate with female training, like a much higher volume program, for instance, if you expect them to be more training resistant, that the guy might need if he's very training resistant, the woman's not. I think that any program predicated on the sale, any program that is being used or being sold under the premise that women are a special population, require specific training modifications, I think that's fraudulent if you assume that the person selling the thing actually knows better. And then if you don't believe that to be true, then you got to wonder, why are people buying this shit? So I thought about doing like a peach, a booty blaster 8-week program, put it out there for free for women, and just call that our women's program, and it just looked just like the guys' program, But I can't bring myself to reduce myself to that level. I think that's trash marketing by guys. Guys are like ultimately behind this, telling somebody to do this. It seems like I think that women are probably better than that and shouldn't participate with that bullshit. So on the 12-week template, you say to take 3 to 5% off the bar after set at 9 to keep it at 9. Is this after the first set or after each set? It's after the first set at 9. Are there disadvantages to deadlifting and squatting on a horse stall mats instead of plywood? I don't think so. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what like the durometer of the rubber mat compared to the, Young's modulus of the plywood. Like how much does it deform? I don't know. I think they're about the same though. I haven't noticed any difference. What about CBD for people with seizure disorders? Not seizure disorders in general, but to specific congenital seizure disorders, and they're on additional anti-epileptics. Maybe there's some benefit there, but that is prescription grade CBD oil, and it's a couple $1,000s a month. So. Do you have interest in growing barbell medicine like Starting Strength or others where you have multiple coaches across the country? Yes. Yes, but we need to avoid the mistakes that Starting Strength made. So, uneven foot stance on the squat. How do you fix it? You can use chalk and like chalk out very symmetrical like foot positions. You can also use electrical tape. That'll work. Yeah. What's up, Mallory? How you doing? Mallory Hopes checking in from Hotlanta. She's actually a very famous food cinematographer, so look out. Hey Doc, why you hating on the Keurig? I like my French press, but when I get lazy and turn to my Keurig when needed. Yeah, so my dad's a Keurig fan, which breaks my heart. I think that if you're short on time, you could do the AeroPress. It takes like the same amount of time and is better coffee. So years from now, future generations will scratch their heads and wonder why this generation was so in love with vaping and CBD. That's true. Also, booty blaster programs, Instagram, all this other sort of stuff. It's crazy to me, but social media is awesome. Like, I think I see the potential in social media. You can do so many cool things and connect with so many people, and information can be so robust. And I think we can do a lot of positive things. But I also see a lot of people. They're almost like predatorial, you know. And I'm pro-capitalist. Like, hey, make your money. That's cool. But I think that we need to be responsible, you know, and also just be nicer to other humans. Like, that's what I would like. Saw several PGA guys wearing anti-inflammatory patches on their elbow forearm this weekend. Any evidence that a patch works better than NSAIDs? Depends on what outcome. There's some, you can get some transdermal stuff. You just talk about transdermal anti-inflammatories in general. Voltaren has good evidence for musculoskeletal pain, particularly shoulder and knee osteoarthritis and pain in general. As far as the actual evidence on patch versus the oral NSAIDs, I'm not sure what the evidence is there. I would expect that it's not much better, but if you believe it to be better, gotta leverage that placebo effect. Case Nides, do leverages in powerlifting make as big of a difference as many people say? Yes. I don't know what exactly they're saying, but do they make a big differences in general? Yes. I'm currently working more than I have in the past year. Strength progression has slowed down significantly. Which variable would be advisable to modify first? Intensity, volume, frequency, etc. Probably volume without knowing anything else. But if your intensity is too high, you may need to adjust that. But most of the time, it's more volume. What's needed? That's the first move. Broden Fitness. Took a CrossFit class with my uncle for fun. Ended up tweaking my back really badly. Tried not to freak and went back to my regular programming. Week and a half later, hit a new squat PR. Amazing. That's awesome. Minus the CrossFit story. Hey, I'm in the third week of the 12-week strength template. I got rec league basketball starting next week. Is it too ambitious to play ball twice per week and run the template? If you played a bunch before, like if it's not new, then, that's like mailman GPP. Basically, the guy who gets a job as a mailman, goes from 0 steps a day to 20,000 steps a day, and that's like an acute stress. But if he's been doing it for 5 years, then it's no longer stressful. It's just part of his daily life. So, if you've been doing it for a long time and you're adapted, then no big deal. What are my thoughts on canned tuna in terms of the whole mercury level situation? Does not concern me. Yes. Experiencing upset stomach after taking PeriRx, should I consider lowering the dose and titrating up, or not worth adding? I don't know. If you cut it in half and you still have it, then you could consider, you say, hey, look, man, this stuff just doesn't agree with me, and you got to move on. But if you cut it in half and the dose in half and it works, it's fine, then I think if you're going to take supplements, it's the easiest way to do it at this time. So, Lucia Monarco, why do most high-profile strength trainers focus on developing training plans targeting populations that are already in decent shape, not glamorous to train people who are obese, overweight? I don't know if that's true. That's our bread and butter are folks who are obese and overweight. So that's who we train. That's who a lot of our templates are geared towards. So I don't know. I don't know who these high-profile strength trainers are focused on. In fact, here's another thing, all right? So this is going to be like the Jordan Rants edition. So imagine that you're in the market for a nutrition coach or a strength coach or something like that online. All right. And you're going through the list, who should I pick? Who should I pick? Who should I pick? And now you're getting targeted advertisements because, the Google machine is learning your search history. And you see somebody who's using a lot of elite level athletes in their marketing and say, hey, well, I coach this person, I coach this person, I coach this person, so I should coach you too. That is actually not only what I would consider ridiculous advertising, that should tell you not to hire that person. If a coach mostly works with high level athletes, okay, then they're already self-selecting for people who over-respond to training, who over-respond to nutritional interventions, okay? They over-respond. That's why they're the freaks of the freaks. That's why they're the high-level athletes, which means they don't have to learn all the tricks in the book, all the science behind all this stuff either, because the person that they're working with is already an over-responder. I wouldn't hire the person who's working with the person who won the CrossFit Games. That's a different animal than me, who's a different animal than, the 45-year-old previously sedentary person who's trying to start training. You want the person who's worked with the most folks like you. And it's unlikely that same person is working with the highest level athletes. Now, there are exceptions. We work with high level athletes and we work with Gen Pop alike, but the people using the advertising, using the highest performers as their bread and butter, I think that's silly. I don't want the person who's working with the highest level performer, That's not me. That's the easy job. So, let's see. If the Goldilocks range for weight on the bar is 67 to 80%, does it matter if one chooses to do reps at 7, at 8, or at 9 RPE as long as one just increases the weight as necessary to keep within that RPE? That question doesn't actually make sense. So if the Goldilocks range for weight on the bar is 67 to 80%, that's not, you have to say for what? For hypertrophy? I mean, that's probably too narrow of a range. And for strength outcomes, that's not entirely true. But what we're telling you is that, yes, for strength development as defined by performance on the squat, bench, deadlift, press, clean jerk, snatch, that, you'll have to practice those movements with some exposure to high intensities. So we're talking like higher than 85%, 90% range. You'll have to have some exposure there, but the bulk of your training should be in the 70 to 80% range with some error bars on either side. That's what we're saying. So I don't think that you could just say, hey, just keep everything between there. Whatever rep range is fine. Whatever RPE is fine. Whatever, type of volume is fine. No, you can't say that. So, all right. I really enjoy this content, by the way. There you go, man. How much affection do you have for extra virgin olive oil? An inert amount of affection. I don't care. Will strength training directly benefit endurance athletes? Directly? I mean, maybe. So if the person's endurance parameters stay the same, meaning they continue to train for their sport, so their running economy stays the same, their VO2 max, other proxies that are not terribly accurate, but whatever, that's all we have, stay the same, whilst improving their ability to produce force in general via strength training, then you think that their performance is going to improve, and that's, what we're kind of trying to do. But to suggest, and that usually comes at a there's some compromise with their actual strength training, meaning they're not going to gain as much weight as somebody who wants to be a weightlifter. They're not going to stop conditioning. They're not going to necessarily get as good at strength training as somebody who has no other sort of athletic pursuit. But yeah, I think it's reasonable to say that folks in endurance sports could benefit from getting stronger. Sure. When using your upper body plug-in for LP, is it okay to do one of the working sets as part of the warm-up for the single? Yeah, I think that's fine. Jordan, how often do you titrate up your nuance? It depends. Who's around? What do you think about replacing your main lift with an accessory lift for a while to push past a plateau, resensitize? I mean, sometimes we do that in full-on pivot weeks with or washout weeks where we're doing, you know, like a different squat variation or deadlift variation. Sure. Much love and support from the Philippines. What's up? I missed this one. Oh. Much love and support from the Philippines. Currently running the Bridge 1.0 and finally took a chance on a legitimate gym where I can do all of my accessories. All right, cool, man. Is there something to going through set points in body weight, muscle mass? I don't actually know what that question means. All right, back to the grams. Howdy, coach. Client's lower back seems to round every time she deadlifts, following all the steps your team prescribed, and it still happens. It's just not proper setting in the back. Might be too much weight. Is there any weight where she's able to deadlift with the flat back? Maybe she needs to be reinforced to consciously extend her back, you know? Are there any benefits to zinc supplementation? I think there's some evidence for folks with diabetes that zinc supplementation can work, but if you don't have diagnosed diabetes, then no, zinc supplementation is worthless. Lonnie asks, will I look as good as you in that t-shirt? You'll probably look better, dude. You're way objectively more handsome than I am, and you have a cooler car than I do, so I feel like it's highly likely. Rotator cuff strain, if mild pain during pressing, is this bad or something you can train through? I don't know if I feel comfortable giving you medical advice over the internets. However, if I had a rotator cuff strain, I would probably train. So, Doc, if you came across a coding centaur and had to defib, would you put the paddles on the human chest or the horse chest? Oh, man. You know, I think if the centaur is coding, you know what I'd probably do? Hopefully I'm not having paddles. Maybe I get the patches, like an AED, you know? And I'd probably put one on the front, one on the back, kind of like a pediatric deal. That's probably what I would do. I don't know. I had a DVT in my common femoral vein. I've been on blood thinners for 2 months now, but my leg still swells up pretty badly when I squat or deadlift. Should I just train through it? I don't think that I can advise you to do that. I think that you need to see your doctor about that and see what kind of swelling is acceptable, what kind of swelling are red flags to them, and how you would be managed appropriately. Because unfortunately, I can't tell you if the swelling is or is not benign unless I'm ready to take responsibility for subsequent outcomes. Is a hernia still obvious if you have a gut? Sometimes, yeah. I love the AeroPress. Love from Fort Riley, Kansas. Hey, there you go. See? Smart man. Smart man. I've been going over my fat by 10 to 30 grams, but still in a deficit, 300 to 400 calories left. Would I still be able to lose weight? If you're in a deficit, sure. Yeah. Hi, Jordan. Shout out from Malaysia. Hey, what's going on? Finally, there's a credible bridge between medicine and fitness. What mistake in starting strength would you rectify so that barbell medicine would grow to starting strength level and standards? So we're already well past their standards, meaning our material is better than theirs, our coaching is better than theirs. And you know, people say, oh, the arrogance of the Feigenbaum. They're so upset. Look, here's the deal. We understand that we are human and to err is human. And like we understand a lot of shortcomings on stuff that we used to say, and we're ravenously consuming new information and thinking about things and questioning things, including our own biases, and we're aware that we have biases, and we're changing things as needed. That cannot happen in starting strength, and that's the death of starting strength. All right? Look, when you say that science isn't, worthy and science is stupid and you don't believe in global warming, like all these things, like you just, come on, guys. All right, where are you going to go with that? To get past the size of starting strength, we need to figure out, we've had to design the seminar and subsequent education products based on our goals. So our seminar, the purpose of the seminar is to communicate ideas that right now are nowhere else available. And so we're trying to bridge medicine and fitness. That's what we're trying to do. And so we are obtaining CMEs. We are going to we're starting doing assessments so that we can gauge how well people are learning and retaining the information. The idea for the seminar is you need to be exposed to this material and show understanding and retention of the material. And then if you want to be a coach, you need to show us that you can coach. So what we're going to do is people who want to be barbell medicine coaches, provided they pass the tests that we set up, which will likely be a 2-part test, then they'll come to our training camp and actually coach, and we'll show them, we'll be able to observe them coaching, and then we'll have some online education portals for people to learn more stuff so that they can be involved here. Starting Strength's got 120, 130 coaches. That's not a goal we're shooting for. Either we're going to not do the coaching thing, or we're going to try to make a multiple of that. So I was going to Starting Strength seminar, but decided not to because I don't want Mark Ripito to pat my lower back and get into my personal space. Is this a good excuse not to go? Some people pay extra for that, When should we expect the new hypertrophy template updates? Hopefully this week. That's what I'm thinking on. Hey, doctor, already a client with Austin. Hey, very cool. Wanted to ask if you've had any negative impacts since more or less separating from Starting Strength. Only from people still associated with Starting Strength. The folks involved there were pretty good friends of ours, and they've said some really nasty things about us, even though we have not said nasty things about them. So they've said nasty things about us directly, and we have not said nasty things about the individuals, the organization, and the head of the organization. Sure. I'll accept that. So that's unfortunate. So we thought we were pretty tight with these folks, and they have not only said those things personally about us, but they have allowed those things to be said about us without saying anything. It's frustrating. So anyway, but separating from them has been the best thing we could ever do. So, do pendlay rows with no eccentric contribute significantly to hypertrophy? Yes, and you can't do them without any eccentric unless you let go of the bar, but I probably wouldn't do that. Is 7 hours of sleep enough? Depends on the person. What do I consider optimal? Optimal for what? Longevity? I mean, 7.5 hours, I think, is the number. For acute increase in performance, you would maybe sleep a little more. Yeah. Hey, Jordan, training for men and women are the same, but why to separate men and women on meets, and why the PRs of women? Why the PRs of women are low compared to men? Yeah, so I don't know why there are men and women's classes. I think that's by convention. And then as far as the lifts per body weight, you're going to see more lean body mass in men compared to women in general at the highest levels for sure. And so more lean body mass is probably the biggest predictor of actual sporting performance there. So if you took men and women of the same height with equivalent amounts of lean body mass, I wouldn't expect there to be a large difference, if any, in performance for the power lifts. Yeah. Why don't I have a girlfriend? Maybe I do. At about week 8 of my novice progression, I strained a groin muscle and had to deload my squats a bit. I should slow my other lifts until back to full squat strength? No. Carry on, and then start squatting again when you can. Tips for tightness in a spinal erector. Tightness is not an accurate or sensitive enough diagnostic tool to do anything about. I wouldn't do anything about it, and I would ignore it unless you have other red flag symptoms, in which case, if you're worried about it, you should get it examined by a professional. I'm not giving you medical advice. How would you warm up for a squat of 330 at an RP of 8 for what, a single or set of 5? I'm 59 years old, on LP 8 weeks, 2 times per week, pulled 235 on deadlift on Sunday, added 5 pounds on Wednesday, couldn't get the bar up. Any recommendations? So I would start training more than twice per week, and I probably wouldn't deadlift every session heavy. You may be able to deadlift or do some sort of pull every session, but I probably wouldn't do it and just add 5 pounds, because it's not enough. You're not generating enough stress to produce an adaptation in the amount of time required. So, yeah. Is there any link between training sensitivity and creatine response? Not that I've seen reliably. Also, is someone who is more sensitive to training also more likely to respond well to creatine supplementation? Now, that's what I was just talking about. I haven't seen that. Can you explain inflammation and why people are saying sugar and carbs are causing it? Inflammation is a broad, generally inclusive term, just when the body is responding to any sort of insult. There are 4 like cardinal elements to inflammation: dolor, rubor, edema. So that's pain, redness, edema, swelling. I guess that's edema. The other 4th one is I forgot offhand. In any event, carbs and sugar aren't necessarily causing that directly. If you have a metabolic pathology, and if you have diabetes, or if you are gaining weight, then yes, the inflammatory situation going on is higher than if you don't. But if you're losing weight, then carbs and sugar, hey, you can do that all right. I don't think that I would be just recommending a bunch of carbs and sugar just in general, but context is dependent. How would you program power leans using RPE? You should lean at RPE 10 always. Dr. Baraki suggested the book Strength is Specific. I agree. I have read it. It is great. Some of the content, sure. That's Beardsley's thing. I mean, I think we mostly agree on stuff. How to build up to a heavy singlet RPE 8, 9 during your warm-up, and then doing your working sets with higher volume, lighter weight to get the best of both worlds. Yeah, that's pretty much how we program. Yeah. Starting Strength has a new book versions because they do admit they were wrong, so I don't know if I can agree with you. I read the books. They admit they have been wrong before. Yeah, we'll see. They are doubling down. They've doubled down about the programming. They've doubled down about the nutrition thing. I don't think that their books are going to... I mean, look, they'd have to delete 75% of practical programming. So we'll see if it happens. Yeah. Just ask Mark what he thinks about RPE. Thoughts on changing stance width while doing starting strength or safety squat bar variations? It depends on the total variation. I mean, I've programmed narrow stance SSB squats before. So if global warming is such a no-brainer, then why doesn't Al Gore even deadlift? I think Al Gore's pulled 500. I'm kidding. I have no idea if that's true. Hey, Jordan, haven't been on a while. Got any competitions coming up? Not yet. Yeah, I'm just going to go coach at Raw Nationals, and then we'll see if I get bit by the bug later on. Yeah. I have no desire to compete right now. So just got a new job and my hours are changed. What's the best way to reset my circadian rhythm to be able to train earlier? I don't think you can outside of going to bed a little bit earlier and waking up a little bit earlier, but it's not really going to work unless you're not going to be able to reset it unless you change your whole sleep, wake or a light dark cycle, and that's probably not going to change if you didn't move. And yeah, I don't know. I don't know if I'd recommend training before work if it's super early in the morning. It's usually not my recommendation unless you can otherwise not train. So, would you have any problem with someone using a Duffalo bar for low bar squats to mitigate elbow pain if there are no plans for competition? I mean, I guess that's fine, but I would wonder why you're so married to the low bar squat if that's the problem, because I would just do high bar squat instead. Yeah. Is it reasonable to have a weekly RPE goal that goes up through the mesocycle? No, I don't think so. Just hit a 445-pound deadlift PR. Thanks, Barbell Medicine. P.S. When are you coming to Vancouver, Canada? Vancouver? Not sure. We're coming to Toronto in 2 weeks. Are you coming? Let's see. Is it possible to get too much sleep? Yes. Anecdotally, I feel less energetic when I get over 7 hours of sleep. It seems unlikely, especially if you're getting 7 hours regularly, or 6 hours regularly. I want to take everyone in this friggin' video that I see posting how we all have to buy it, blah, blah, blah. My postdoc friend I told you about who's going to fail, blah, blah. What? I don't even know what that means. So, all right. Do you have any doctors I could look up that could help me dial in my TRT? Depends what state you live in. So, hey, Jordan, coming back to Australia? Yes. Also, what do I need to know about my cholesterol and diet if my brother and father are on statins, and thoughts on statins? Well, it depends why they're on statins. If it's familial hypercholesterolemia, then your dietary cholesterol intake and dietary fat intake probably something you should look into. If it's not due to that, meaning later on in life they have high cholesterol and your cholesterol is fine now, then, keep up the good work, eating plenty of dietary fiber, maintaining the appropriate weight, body weight, and continue to train. As far as statins, if they lower someone's risk of increased mortality and morbidity, then I am pro statin. If somebody fails lifestyle intervention first or has serious issues with cholesterol, then I think statins, potentially PCSK9 inhibitors, would be very useful for them. Should I use a belt, wrist wraps, etc. for accessory lifts on bridge? No, we say specifically not to use a belt. You can use wrist wraps if you like for pressing. You can use straps for pulls if you like. So, what are some examples of topics you don't agree with Rip on? Programming, the biomechanics of all the lifts, the rationale for why you should do the lifts a certain way in general. That's all very wrong. Yeah, so program nutrition, the discounting science, the scientific method. Yeah, so nearly everything, it seems, except for that we both want people to strength train and get strong. And, but for instance, go post on the forum that the high bar back squat is just as good as the low bar back squat for getting strong. And you'll be met with a bunch of stuff about, well, no, the increased forward lean and the more horizontal back angle places more stress on the back and yields better strength outcomes and hypertrophy outcomes, neither of which are true based on, actual motor unit activation studies, and neither of which are true based on any outcome studies. So right now, the evidence suggests that high bar back squats and low bar back squats are equivalent, but to get them to admit that, can't do it. So why would you do low bar back squats? Well, if you prefer them. Oh, low bar back squats don't hurt the knees as much because the knees don't go as far forward. What? You're saying that there's a biomechanical reason for pain that does not due to acute trauma? That seems highly unlikely and disagrees with all modern science on pain in general, so that's wrong. Maybe if you tell people that they're going to have knee pain if they do high bar back squats and front squats or push presses or anything else where the knees go forward a little bit, maybe that's a nocebo. Maybe that's a problem. So, yeah, I could keep going. So, any planned seminars coming to Washington, D.C.? You might go to Virginia. Yeah. Burning question for you today. It's been a rough last couple of days. Training's been rough. I've been averaging 4 hours of sleep in the last 4 days. Should I train? Yes, train. Any downsides to mixing whey with coffee? Not at all. Yeah, just because the high temperature is not going to do anything. Just like it's certainly not anything more that the pH of your stomach, somewhere between 1 and 3 when you drink some protein. Certainly nothing more than that's going to do. Some people ask, what would Jesus do? The nuanced ask, what would Jordan do? Maybe we should go out with bracelets. Let's see. Doc Bony Bone, what's up, man? Your method, spread volume out over more days. Have you ever experimented with lower frequency with equated volume, so higher volumes per session? I have. Yeah, I have. I find that to be a little more fatiguing acutely. And then the frequency tends to, like the increased exposure does tend to improve skill-related outcomes more than spreading them out further. Yeah, for most folks. Sometimes people respond better to that, so, different folks. Landmine press useless as an assistance exercise. I don't think it's useless. I think that there are other training options that you can use to get strong. It depends what you want to do. So everything is specific. It's outcome dependent. So I bought the hypertrophy template and was hyped about the update, but I erased the email accidentally. Any way to download it, the update? Yeah, we'll send it to you. You'll get it. How much do you love the term voluntary hardship? I think that it's stupid. I think that the ethos and this pseudo-religious sort of crap that's just trash, man. It's just like, I don't even know. Like, stop clicking on their videos, Just let it end. I don't want to hear about it anymore. There's a patch we use in the PT clinic with dexamethasone, a steroid, and saline, yeah, to reduce inflammation. Yeah. Topical steroids to reduce joint inflammation. Eh. Eh. When appropriate and warranted, thoughts on generic versus brand name on NSAIDs. I don't think either are better than the other, the equivalent. Just got a landscaping job on Monday, Wednesday, Friday. Those are my usual training days. Should I change the workout days or not? I think if you haven't done any landscaping before, you could potentially benefit if you're training on Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday until you get used to it. Mike T from RTS has posted example warm-up for singles, 2x10 at the bar, 2x5 at 30% of estimated single, 1x3 at 50%, 1x1 at 70%, 1x1 at 90%. That's reasonable. Yeah, we haven't published a warm-up routine because that it kind of goes against this sort of self-efficacy thing. You have to learn. You got to do it yourself. I'm forcing you to do it. You can use Mike T's thing. That's fine. And it's likely to be in this novice programming book. But, you know, on the other hand, I don't want to make you reliant on us or the internet to train. You have to gain some self-efficacy. So low bar back squat develops the quads equally to high bar. For some people, yeah. Yeah, provided the volume's the same. Yeah, I would expect the same outcomes in quadricep hypertrophy as high bar, provided the volume and average intensity were similar amongst both things. Sure. Any plans for a seminar in Alberta, Canada? Probably not. Yeah. Is my novice program going to be an LP? No, because training is not linear anyway. So, any thoughts on red light therapy? I don't even know what that is. Thoughts on high sodium intake? You'd have to define that. Average intake in America is like 3,400 milligrams of sodium per day. The U-shaped curve that's currently being, the IOM, now the National Academy of Sciences, kind of found with respect to all-cause mortality and morbidity, even amongst folks with hypertension or high blood pressure, is so between 3 to 6 grams of sodium per day. So that means if you take in less than 3,000 milligrams, your mortality goes up. And if it's higher than 6,000 milligrams, your mortality also goes up. But it's not for athletes, so that's another nuance or caveat in there. The data is tough to interpret, and I think that when you look at the IOM's panel, again, now National Academy of Sciences, half of them were like, hey, we don't really have any recommendations for these lowered sodium intakes. And then the other half's like, well, we know that high blood pressure is a thing with a huge swath of the population having high blood pressure and a huge swath of those folks not being optimally managed with medication because their blood pressures are not well controlled. So we know that if we lower sodium intake, the blood pressure is going to go down. So that's probably where a lot of that recommendation comes from. And then folks who eat mostly foods that aren't processed, probably it's going to be hard for them to get enough, or to get high intakes of sodium in anyway. And if that's the goal, getting people to eat less processed foods, I think just say that instead of the sodium thing. Yeah. Best way to improve insulin sensitivity: lose weight and resistance train. Do you get stronger training in kilos or pounds? I prefer kilos, but I don't know if there's any difference. New fitness magazine endorsers bloodletting as the new Get Lean Quick scheme. Oh, God. That's badness. Looks like we've been here for an hour. So, we got to go. Thanks for tuning in. If you guys check this out or checking this out on YouTube, please